for joining us. My name is Justin Gibbs, and I'm the collections developer for the Pink Palace Museum. We are so glad you could join us today, and if you wish to revisit this talk later or share it with a friend, it is now available on our YouTube channel. Just go to Pink Palace Museum. We're giving this lecture to the Memphis Central Library, the University of Memphis Library, and Rhodes College, so you can check those out there too. Our speaker today is a lifelong Memphian and a graduate of both Memphis University School and Memphis State University. In his extensive experience, he has managed some of the community's greatest assets, including museums, the Park Commission, and that band of ducks downtown. Will you please help give a warm welcome to our Shelby County historian, or former Shelby County historian, Mr. Jimmy Ogle.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin. Women in Memphis history. Let's do a couple of disclaimers here first, okay? When I give the talk at Elmwood Cemetery, I say there's 75,000 people buried at Elmwood. You're not going to hear about 74,950 of them today, okay? So don't tell me who I left off today, okay? That happens to me. When I did the Historic Homes PowerPoint, I said, there's no way I'm going to win on this one. I'm going to miss somebody's house. So I went and got Perry Magnus's book, Good Abode. I said, this is Historic Homes Part 1. And then y'all can help me do Part 2. And sure enough, I already got enough house suggestions for Part 2 of that. So what I'm doing here is, my disclaimer is, back about 3 years ago, I got involved with housing and community development. When they developed that Heritage Trail in downtown Memphis that you've seen the brochure on the table out here, between South Main, Beale Street, East, and Crump. And it's this area, like I said, when I did the Century of Black History in Memphis, you know, we stop at slavery, we start again at the sanitation strike, and leave out that whole 100 years in between of people that have accomplished here in the black community, whether it's doctors, lawyers, preachers, teachers, attorneys, you name it. We cover basketball real good. We cover music real good, don't we, in those centuries, but not these other folks, the Robert Church family of, you know, men and women, the Blair T. Hunts, the Hollis Price, the Joseph Walkers, just names, the Ida B. Wells, all sorts of names. And that's what I tried to cover there. That's what that history trail helps uncover in that kind of forgotten area in Memphis, and they got a whole nice trail there. Well, that got me thinking last year, well, there's another segment of our community we hadn't covered very well, women in Memphis history. So I went around town the way I do. I was out exploring and started looking for every place I could find that had a woman's name on it, whether it's MaxineSmith STEAM Academy, the old Fairview Junior High School, Cornelia Crenshaw Library on Vance Street, Margaret Pope, the sculpture in Overton Park, the Memphis Belle. There are brass notes on Beale Street with women's names on them. There's 3 stars at the Orpheum. There's 2 set of duck feet. There's historical markers with names like Lucy Campbell and Ida B. Wells, and just on and on. I developed this alpha list, and it grew and grew and grew to about, I guess, 200 names or so. And so I said, well, I know my friend Deborah Clubb at Memphis Area Women's Council. She'd like to get a hold of this list and say, let's do something, because I wanted to do another PowerPoint. I was looking for another PowerPoint to do anyway, and that's what this one started out as last summer. I've done it about 18 times now. It's been my #1 PowerPoint this year when I'm going to my circuit around the senior citizen centers. I always start them out with historic Memphis to modern Memphis, the Cliff Notes version, you know, and then to come back and hit different topics. So that's how this all got started. And what Deborah and a band of women from Women of Achievement, and I don't remember all the names, Judy Card, Gail Murray, Beverly Bond, Peggy Catherine, Carolyn Head helped with our exhibit. There's an exhibit downtown. Carolyn, where are you? You're in the audience here. There you are, back there. We did, and Laura Todd. And we did an exhibit about Women of Achievement in the Vasco A. Smith Administration Building, in the lobby there. We've done 7 other about local communities, and now this February, March, April is about Women of Achievement. In that exhibit case is there, and Carolyn helped very mightily with that, and so did Deborah and Laura. And so we've kind of met, or they've met a lot. They've taken this list of just names. You know, I'm just names and numbers. You know, I'm kind of like the who, what, not the when, where, why. They're the when, where, and why. And they've expanded upon this list, and not every woman of achievement in this community has something named for them, you know. And I think, Deborah, if I can say the story how you got started on doing this too. Well, tough. I'm going to say it anyway. I'll ask you. You know, in fact, I have this big and large newspaper clipping from 1985, and I became general manager of Mud Island the first time. And it was, the byline was by Deborah Clubb, and that's it's framed right over my desk. I looked at that the other night and said, golly, we've come a long way, hadn't we, from 1985, Park Commission days. And she was with the newspaper, that mean old newspaper at the time, you know. And so she was covering award ceremonies, about men, the same men, getting the same awards from the same men, just kind of rotating around all the time. And she finally knocked on her head saying, golly, some women around here have done something, hadn't they? And Women of Achievement got formed, I guess you would say there, in the Memphis Area Women's Council. That's kind of how it got formed, out of that necessity. And now, since 1985, again, there's 3 volumes here, but this is the 35th year, right, of Women of Achievement, those 7 different categories. That's how that got started, because women have done a lot for this community. And that's what we're going to go through today. And my subjects that I picked out are people I know or I've been involved with historical markers, or I know a little bit about. And at the end of the show, we're going to have Deborah and Judy come up, right? And we'll have these booklets here, and we'll go back to the screens, and we'll pick out a name or two, or you pick out a name. I want to know so and something about this person here. And they'll read a couple of paragraphs from biography, because we don't have all this committed to memory yet, right? They know a lot. Let's thank our sponsors again. I'd like to thank Memphis Heritage, West Tennessee Historical Society, the Registrar's Office. These are great resources for you. Dig Memphis, over 10,000 images there at the library you can get. Digital Memphis. Memphis Area Women's Council, memphiswomen.org. That's the main site right there. They're a nonprofit group with individual and organization members. They're not service providers and do not raise funds to support social services. Some of the statements you can read here: to end corporal punishment in city schools, to secure a living wage for Memphis and Shelby County employees, to lead a new awareness campaign to connect victims and volunteers to domestic resources, erasedomesticcrime.com. They've also been instrumental in helping reduce the rape kit backlog too, put some pressure on some folks down there about that. So very much on the scene here. Memphis Area Women's Council. Convene, collaborate, communicate, change. memphiswomen.org. Here's a little welcome from Deborah. Only one organization unites women's voices in strategic action to change policies for Shelby County women and girls, the Memphis Area Women's Council. With the help of a passionate volunteer board and linkages to the right partners and funders on specific strategic actions, the Women's Council is making change. So here are the 3 books I'm talking about. Again, this is at 3 o'clock, not 2 o'clock, but if you get there at 2 o'clock, you can still buy your ticket at 2 o'clock, I bet. Get in there or check the website. But this is a great day there. And you can nominate people for Women of Achievement. This is on the website of womenofachievement.org, okay? These websites get longer as we go through this show, don't they, Paula? And you can actually nominate people each year. I guess the nomination season's basically November and December, January, or any time really, okay. But they cut off like in January and have to make a decision, make an announcement in late February, early March, and then have the awards every year in Women's History Month. 7 different categories: initiative, determination, courage, heroism, vision, steadfastness, and heritage. So we're going to go through these 7 categories and then come back. Initiative, for a woman who sees the opportunity to use her talents and created her own future. My image here is the Lee sisters, of course, the most arrested family in America, according to Jet magazine in the 1960s, for their nonviolent, peaceful protests of sit-ins and lunch counters in department stores downtown. We placed this marker there on, gosh, I think it was March 23rd, 2017. Had 5 of the 7 Lee sisters still living in there, right there at Jolly Royal, obviously. And the old B&W is still in the terrazzo tile there, the black and white. As you go in, Dr. Lucinda Gray was there that day. He's one of our great Historical Commission members, and he took us on a tour of the basement he worked in the 1950s down there as a kid, you know. So you never know where you're going to get great tours from. But here's all the people here, real quick, about 35 names. Again, these are in the books. You can buy the books outside too. But you can see all sorts of names since 1985. You might recognize some of the names through here for initiative. Judy Pizer, boy, she's been on the scene for a long time for the Center for Southern Folklore for, I tell you, what a great job. Carol Collette is now with Memphis Riverfront Parks Partnership. She's been around. Tina Burchett, the late Tina Burchett, I would say. Cordell Jackson, the rock and roll grandma, remember her? Later on, but she's like one of the first females to have a production recording studio in our country in Memphis. Deanie Parker with the Med, and of course Memphis in May, and now stacked. Jody Vance, golly, here's old Jody, there she is again. Jody's here with the Downtowner magazine, Gail Rose. You can see some of these names on the list. Now we'll come back to the list. Determination for a woman who solved a glaring problem despite widespread inertia. Anybody heard of widespread inertia in Memphis, Tennessee? Sometimes we've coined that phrase. Apathy or ignorance around her. Oni Johns, right? Oni Johns. See, I get y'all backwards all the time. Oni Johns, and and blame me, because I used to go to Caritas Village all the time for the lunch and visit with the people. It's over there in Binghamton. I guess right along Merton Avenue, isn't it? Near the old First Baptist Church, Merton. I lived in that neighborhood twice in my life, in the 70s, with Phil Cannon. Goodness. And there with that community center, making a difference in Binghamton, what a mixed community it is. And of course, now Broad Avenue's coming back in that area. I believe Mac Edwards is over there running the Caritas Village now. Great food, art on the wall, community visits, just a really neat place there in the community. She made a big difference there for a long time. Determination, here are the people in that category. Joan Turner Bifus, there's one I know. Let's see. Virginia Dunaway, Bernice Donald. Gosh, we'll come back to some of these names in a minute. I'm going to go through another list as well. And we'll come back and we'll have books here, and we're going to let you pick out a couple of names to ask us about. Courage for a woman who, facing active opposition, backed an unpopular cause in which she deeply believed. Well, gosh, Minerva Jonathan was was our first African-American female commissioners on the Shelby County Board of Commissioners. There, Georgia King still walking the streets, riding the buses, pounding on City Hall about equal access and transportation for all. The Georgia King Honorary Street is right in front of St. Mary's Episcopal Cathedral there on Poplar Avenue. And she's around. I'll see her in Westies every now and then. I see Carla Thomas around every now and then like that, and get to talk to them for about a half an hour. It's really neat to talk about their stories and listen to them. MaxineSmith, we'll come back to her later on. Jocelyn Westberg. God, way back in 1990? Oh my goodness. Let's see, some other names here. Let's go to the next category. Oh, there she, she sold a book. She wrote a book, didn't she? This is the longest title going this year in books, right? Southern Jewish American Princess, Civil Rights Activist. She actually had a book signing a couple months ago, and I went to it just because I know I was speaking at Food for Thought the next day. So why not get a slide up, because I knew she'd be there, and I get some points with Johnson about the book. And sure enough, they had so many people at Novel, they had to bring in more chairs. Remember that night? It was a great night there. So this is breaking news, folks, right here. But there was a story about her in the paper back in August when Memphis women fought prejudice and fear. And of course, she's right here. She'll be outside for a couple of hours. Y'all can talk to her, visit with her, buy a book, get it autographed, personalized. There'll be some in the Pink Palace gift shop downstairs. Heroism for a woman whose heroic spirit was tested and shown as a model to all Shelby County and beyond. And that's Nina Katz. Now, I was doing a program at the Memphis Jewish Community Center, and this picture came up. Not this one, but I had the Upstanders mural down by the Civil Rights Museum. She's right in front and center in that, and I just flashed that Upstanders mural up, and about every one of the Jewish women in the place went, "There's Nina Katz!" Woo, I guess I better find out who Nina Katz is, don't I? And I found out that day for sure how she worked so hard with the Holocaust victims and survivors and the knowledge of all that. I got talking real fast last week on Drake on the radio and said they're digitizing me at the Pink Palace. They're going to make a Holocaust out of me. He goes, "You mean hologram?" So sometimes I get talking real fast. Okay. So, heroism. Nina Katz right there. Francis Coe. Reading on down through some of the names. Summer Owens. Didn't have anybody in 2013, Deborah. Okay, well, Tammy Sawyer here recently. You know Tammy's running for mayor now, okay? Moving right on up. Vision for a woman whose sensitivity to women's needs led her to tremendous achievements for women. Well, there's Paula Casey, and there's Deborah Clubb right there. Been working for many years in the Memphis scene and Tennessee scene and Mid-South scene and Delta scene about women's affairs and women's accomplishments and recognition and needs and causes. And there's old Jan Ann Sherman and Beverly Bond, kind of a duo, a dynamic duo there when you talk about professors at the University of Memphis who've written a lot of books about history. And Jan Ann's a Phoebe Ogle book. Dr. Bond, the guy, they wrote the Century book for the University of Memphis, 100-year history together. I learned a lot from that. And Beverly's still on the scene. She's working on this Women of Memphis Trail. Can we talk about that? Sooner or later. Well, that means later, it looks like to me. To you? And Vision. Here's our next cat. Oh, this is the Vision. There's Elma Neal Roan, Elma Roan Fieldhouse. Oh, golly. Paula Casey right there. Here's Deborah Clubb. Jan Ann Sherman. Some of these names here. Perry Magnus, yeah. Beverly Green Bond. Perry's done a lot of books. That Elmwood book, hers, is really good. Steadfastness for a lifetime of achievement. Well, I threw old Martha Ellen Maxwell up there because, man, she really put it to me in the 1980s with Memphis in May and with the Memphis Arts Festival at both the Botanic Garden and over. That actually started at the Shell, Memphis Arts Festival did. Or Arts in the Park is what she called it. And moved out to the Botanic Garden, then went downtown to be the River Arts Festival. Now I think it's all along Riverside Drive, but it started some 30-odd years ago. Really big with the symphony, Memphis in May. Verla Pettit, I remember seeing those bus benches down there about Verla Pettit and Memphis Union Mission and the Victory Valley out there near Shelby Forest. Murdy Buckman, Maddie Singstack, Frances Dancy Hooks. Found her name on a building out there in Parkway Village, the Greater Middle Baptist Church. Dr. Benjamin Hooks and Frances Dancy Hooks is on that activities building there. Carolyn Gates, Yvonne Acey. Gosh, Memphis, not Memphis, Africa in April back in 1985 started. Guess where they started Africa in April? Confederate Park. Oh, David Acey loved that. Right there in the statue of Jefferson Davis. He put it right in there. First 5 years. I was at the park. I was the deputy director of the park. And he said, I guess you can do that. Okay. They've moved over to Robert Church Park because it's a lot bigger, but that's where it started, 1985. That all just didn't happen in the last couple of years, folks. There's been a movement for a long time. Dorothy Kirsch. Miriam Nacosta Willis was there's another honoree right there. Heritage for a woman of generations whose past achievements enriched our lives, Phoebe Fairgrave Ogle. How many of y'all really know who Phoebe Fairgrave? Well, the front row does, don't they? Here we go. Okay, we'll come back to her in a minute, but Frances Wright, the Yellow Fever, Heroines and Martyrs, that's a grouping right there, so many folks. Ida B. Wells, Mary Dreyfus. The Treadwell and Harry Insurance Company, they were female-owned at the time, you know, or at the beginning. That's unusual at the time. Marion Scudder Griffin, we'll come back to her. Lucy Campbell, we'll come back to her in a minute. Charles Orman Williams, she and her sister Mabel C. Williams were our first 2 superintendents of Shelby County Schools. Marion Keisker held Elvis around for a little while. Then, in fact, this August, folks, we're going to be down at 982 South 3rd. We're going to dedicate a historical marker for WHER, the first all-girl radio station in the country back in 1955. So not only did we break the color barrier in radio in Memphis, Tennessee in 1948 with WDIA, we broke the gender barrier in 1955 in our country for radio. Little old Memphis, Tennessee. And Marion Keisker was a part of one of those 8 ladies that Kimmons Wilson and Sam Phillips thought it'd be a good idea to let a bunch of women talk on the radio. It's okay, isn't it, Terry? Bessie Vance Brooks, a lot of great names here, Lois D. Berry. All right, here's my index. So we're going to flip through these real quick, then we'll get to our participation section. 19th century, civil rights, sidewalks, public achievers, government officials, memorials, buildings, historical markers. Here we go. 19th century, Frances Wright and Neshoba out there. And so you see right here, you see the nuns buried at Elmwood Cemetery, and they've got them in the shape of a cross. They finally found these old stones here. Here's the mural, the civil rights mural down there at Martin Luther King Avenue and Main Street, right on the MLG&W garage. U.S. Colored Troops, Ida B. Wells, Robert Church, First Baptist Church, Beale Street right there, Daisy Theater, Memphis 13, the Higbee School for young ladies in that time. Let's go through here. All right, Frances Wright and Neshoba. Of course, the Tennessee Historical Commission had it over at Summer and Sycamore View, which is about 8 miles out of the way. So the Germantown and Shelby County Historical Commission, City of Germantown, got it right over in the Riverdale section. This is the train track nobody likes. And there's the Wolf River. There's that track between the train track and the Wolf River. Poplar Avenue will be about right here. So it's positioned right in there. We got it put in the spot where the foundation of her house was back in the 1820s when she was trying to teach slaves how to be free. How do you know how to be free if you've never been free? And this is in the 1820s, folks. The fourth bluff, Elizabeth Avery Meriwether, this has been moved and it's going to be replaced, we say, later on this year on the river side of the law school. We'll come back to that in just a minute, but this was in what was former Confederate Park, now called Fourth Bluff, and it's been cleaned out right now, and new things are happening there. And Elizabeth Avery Meriwether, for a long time, worked for suffrage and passed away in 1917. Just didn't quite make the finish line. But the other folks did make that finish line and crossed it. Here's the Memphis martyrs. Their names are in the Constance, Ruth, Thecla, and Francis. Their name is in gold leaf there at the St. Mary's Episcopal Cathedral on Poplar. This martyrs marker is down at Martyrs Park by Channel 3, and there's they are at Elmwood. Beale Street, Ida B. Wells is on the marker there at Beale Street. Of course, her office was in First Baptist Church, Beale Street. She got run out of there, burned out of there, and left, went to Chicago and New York and I think Europe. And after the lynching of the 3 men from the People's Grocery, in fact, Saturday week, March 23rd, I think it is, at noon, there'll be a dedication to Tom Moss in Zion Cemetery on South Parkway, 12 noon. I got to dig a hole here sometime next week, it looks like. I've been chosen to do that. But we're going to have a dedication to the People's Grocery lynching victims there with the National Park Service and the Zion Cemetery Association. Ernestine Jenkins has worked a lot on that as well. And this is a part of that story. Civil rights, women's suffrage movement, Marion Griffin, NAACP, Memphis State 8, Memphis 13, and the Lee sisters. Here we go. Marion Griffin, this is right down at First Tennessee Bank at Madison and 3rd, or Madison and B.B. King. Marion Griffin, although qualified, was refused a Tennessee law license for 7 years solely because she was a woman. In 1907, she became the first woman attorney in Tennessee. She still couldn't vote. Think about that till 13 years later. And lobbied the legislature to admit women to the practice of law. In 1923, she became the first woman elected to the Tennessee House of Representatives for many years before she retired. In 1949, her law office was located in this building, the old Goodwin Institute site, before they tore it down. They built that in 1964. And there she is, Marion Griffin. MaxineSmith, in 1958, she was refused admission to Memphis State University at the time. It's had 5 names in 100 years. So she became a student activist with the local branch, or the Memphis branch of the NAACP in 58, and grew on up and through there and became the executive director. But two schools are named for her. The old Fairview Junior High School, the MaxineSmith STEAM Academy, and then you get down to southeast Shelby County out there, Southwest Tennessee Community College campus out there is named for her. MaxineSmith, and longtime Executive Secretary of the Memphis branch, NAACP. What else can you say about this library on Vance Avenue? The Cornelia Crenshaw Library, she spoke her mind. I didn't Photoshop that in there. That's right there on there. And she was always pounding at City Council. I remember in the 80s about MLG&W rates and again access and people's access and recognition. Apparently she helped ferry Dr. Martin Luther King around a lot in the 1960s here and providing transportation and access for him. The Memphis State 8, we got involved with them in 2012, the 100th anniversary of the university. These are the first 8 students to desegregate the Memphis State University. Here's the dedication ceremony. There they are right there. 5 of these were women, 3 were men at the time. We just lost a couple of them in the last couple of years. They passed away. Here's the dedication that day. The marker's right there by the administration building. I'm sitting right there. I got to talk that day. There's the marker, and talked about their bravery and all the harassment they went through to get there. Remember, it was an open campus. You could drive through the campus at that time. It's a really nice pedestrian campus now. And people I take over there all the time from the Northeast just think it's a gorgeous campus, and it is. But people are riding through in convertibles, waving flags and being derisive and intimidating to these students, and they endured. In 1959, the Memphis State 8. The Memphis 13, and yes, there's only 12 kids in that picture. Been told that. But other communities or cities were desegregating their public schools with high school age kids, teenagers, and they were getting in fights and didn't take the language and the profanity and all that stuff. So the Memphis branch of the DoubleACP thought it'd be a good idea to get first graders. You know how your first graders are, they're kind of bobblehead, docile, you know, I'll do anything. And so they interviewed 200 first graders and selected 13, and what we found out in our text meetings for these markers probably traumatized 13 first graders for the rest of their life. Seriously, that's what they said. And there they are. But 7 of the 13 were girls. We called them pint-sized pioneers on the markers. And these are first graders, 13 first graders who went to Bruce, Roselle, Gordon, and Springdale elementary schools. These are the girls' portions of it right here. And look at the names, Kyles and Willis, and well, later on Willis maybe, or some of the men are, Foamy? What's his name? Anyway, these are the girls involved in the Memphis 13. There were 6 boys as well. And we went and did it. One side of the marker tells the whole story at each school, and then the other side of the marker tells you the story at that particular school with the children that went into that school, and every one of them wanted to mention their parents at the very end to a person, so we got their names on there. And Dr. Listen McGray got a group of people together and raised $10,000 to get these markers up, so give him a pat on the back. He's a living legend, by the way, too. And there's Bruce, Gordon, Roselle, and Springdale, the 4 schools they entered into on October the 3rd, 1961. And then, of course, the Lee sisters, I mentioned them a minute ago, what a hoot they were. They would argue in this text meeting about who had the red shoes that day, and they couldn't wear the red dress because you were in jail, you were in juvie, and all this stuff, and they get their brothers involved, but they were very determined. Elaine Lee Turner, of course, runs the Heritage Tours of Memphis for the last 30 years and the Underground Railroad Museum, and for most of this time, the W.C. Handy House on Beale Street, but just a great warrior out there for history in Memphis. And so we put this up right there. This is the only historical marker on Main Street in downtown Memphis between Poplar and the Arcade Restaurant. That's 2 miles of Main Street. And this is the first one and the only one, okay? And don't tell me Piggly Wiggly, because that's on Jefferson, okay? And the next one down there is Modern Moviemaking at the Arcade. That's on Bishop G.E. Patterson. But that's significant when we were trying to find a location. And, of course, the people in the neighborhood liked it, and the Downtown Memphis Commission approved. Because we were originally thinking over in Robert Church Park, well, there's a bunch of markers over there. We wanted to get it to the site where this really occurred. Goldsmiths, Shaneberg's Black and White, and some of the lunch counters up and down there. Nice setting. It's not in anybody's way. Sidewalks, real quick. Orpheum Theater Stars, Beale Street Brass Notes, Peabody Hotel Duck Hall of Fame, Downtown Memphis Commission, sidewalk stories. 3 Memphians are in the over 85 or so sidewalks stars there. Cullen Asperian, Marguerite Piazza, Sybil Shepherd. Sybil is one of the folks that helped get the Orpheum purchase in 1976 for $285,000 it was saved. Think about that. Beale Street Brass Notes, there's about 180 brass notes. I just picked out Ruby Wilson, Ann Peebles, Lily Mae Glover. I think 24 women now are in the brass notes, 22 down, 2 more to come. Reba Russell, I forget the other one right now, it's getting ready to be installed. The Peabody Duck Hall of Fame of the 26, we got 2 women, Pat Kerr Tigert and Lynn Sittler. This is the Belts Corporation, the Peabody, talking about the people in the 70s and 80s and 90s that really helped bring downtown back again. Whether it's the Belts Corporation or Bernard Lansky or Henry Turley or Kevin Kane or Chamber of Commerce people or lawyers, people like that. These are the 2 women there. So you start walking around, you start seeing people's names everywhere now. They kind of jump out at you, you know. On the sidewalk stories, there's about 50 of these sidewalk stories in downtown Memphis. Now, Corey Pre-Janes, she claimed to give psychic predictions and recover stolen goods and all this stuff, but she's good enough to have a sidewalk story in downtown Memphis. And then Hattie Mainley, who back in, I think it was this, guess I can't read it right now, 1887, she sat on the wrong spot on a bus or a streetcar. This is like 70 years before Rosa Parks did that, and she got taken off and arrested. Probably one of my favorite one is Heroic Hooker. This is at Gayoso and November the 6th, 1934 Street. Annie Cook ran a house of commercial affection right there. That's the name we use at Elmwood, right? That's the official Elmwood name for it. A house of commercial affection. And during the yellow fever epidemic, she emptied out her workers, or employees, and took on yellow fever victims, and then they came back in and helped too, and the workers, the employees, passed away for their care during the yellow fever. You know, over 5,000 people died that summer. That's the largest single loss of life for a one-day event in the history of our country is what I understand, larger than the Johnstown flood, the San Francisco earthquake, and the Chicago fire combined. 5,000. We lost 25,000 due to desertion. We lost 3/4 of our population in 1 month and went into bankruptcy for 14 years. And downtown hadn't been so deserted again until the 1970s. And that's next Thursday's story. Public achievers, Elizabeth Messick, Messick High School, Mabel C. Williams, that's Germantown High School, Rachel Burroughs out there in Arlington, going around the community here, Phoebe Ogle, Margaret Polk, Barbara Walker, Pauline Pep Marquette, Elmer Rohn. Let's look at these real quick. There's Barbara Walker, 1946 Miss America from Memphis, Barbara Walker Hummel. There's a married name. The last Miss America crowned in a swimming suit, and the last one crowned from a city. Miss Tennessee came in 15th that year. But Robbie Hummel, her son, taught me how to tie a bow tie in junior high, MUS. Andy Hummel was in the group Big Star, if you know that group. I heard a lot about them. Andy went to MUS with us. Let's see, Mabel C. Williams, the Germantown High School was actually named for her for a long time. You'll see the name on the old building. Rachel Burrs is a history museum there in Arlington. In fact, Charles Orman Williams and Mabel Williams both lived in that house in Arlington. Phoebe Ogle was a wing walker, the first female to get an aviation license, pilot license, and a mechanics license, based out of Memphis here. And our control tower at the airport is named for her. She later on in life, if you read Jan Ann's book about walking on air, it really tells about how she helped write some of the aviation laws for our nation up in Washington, D.C. in the middle of the century. Margaret Polk, the Memphis Belle, lived in the Alicia Gardens area here near Overton Park, but she was the girlfriend of the pilot of the Memphis Belle, the most famous B-17 bomber in World War II. It's named for her. The first one to successfully complete 25 missions over Europe without a loss of a crew member. And then Pauline Pep Marquette. You think Marquette Park out there is named for the Marquette Explorer. No, he's not. It's Pauline Pep Marquette, a female recreator from the middle of the century here in the Memphis Park Commission. When I was a kid growing up, we played our junior baseball games at Marquette Park. And it said Pauline Pep Marquette on the sign at the time. So we always told our folks we were going to play at the Pep. And when they moved the Christopher Columbus statue out there because the Italian festival got to be so big, when did Christopher Columbus come to Memphis, by the way? They wanted, Strickland, our councilman at the time, your buddy Strickland, wanted to change the name to Christopher Columbus Park. I said, you got the wrong Marquette, buddy. We're not going to take a woman's name off a park in Memphis. Like I really scared him, but it's still there, and it just says Marquette. See, that's what I don't like about the current branding of the parks we have is they have the last name. Like, who is Morris of Morris Park down there across from St. Mary's Cathedral, the Episcopal Cathedral? He was one of the former parsons there, you see. But I wish we had the full names on all the parks rather than just the last name so we can distinguish them. And, of course, Elmer Rohn Fieldhouse over there, the old Memorial Fieldhouse on the University of Memphis campus. Some government officials, we mentioned Minerva Jonikin. You go into City Council, let's see, there's 15 portraits in there at City Council of the over 70 that have served over the years, women that served in City Council since they went to the 68, I think is when they went to the commission form of government. Bernice Donald, oh, and I don't have the county ones up, but there's like 22, I believe, in the Shelby County Commission, pictures on the wall in the chambers there of county commissioners. Bernice Donald, the first African-American female appointed to the 6th Circuit Court in Cincinnati. She's a graduate of University of Memphis and University of Memphis Law School and the court system of Memphis, 201. Buildings, women in stone and statues. Yeah, I started looking at statues. I got so starry-eyed about this, you know. Well, let's look at everything. Hebe Fountain, Judge Jeremy Bailey Courthouse, Memphis Brooks, Peabody Lobby Fountain, Brinkley Plaza, Muted Bells. Let's get to it. Here's the Hebe Fountain, 1876. We're the fastest growing city in the country after the Civil War that didn't touch us. Peabody Hotel opened, the railroad's going through here, the steamboats landing on the cobblestones. It's the 100th anniversary of America, so 50 citizens raised $1,000 each. That's $50,000 to build this fountain down in Court Square, and their names are all in the top of it all the way around. Madam Vincent is the only female in there. I don't know what Madam Vincent did exactly. Deborah does for sure. Maybe she'll come up and tell us about it in Memphis. But anyway, 2 years later we hit the yellow fevers. That shows you how high we were in 1876, skipping the Civil War because of the Union occupation, then boom, the bottom falls out right after that. Judge Jeremy Bailey Courthouse, 4 of the 6 statues you see around, the largest of the kind in the country out of a single block of Tennessee marble. They represent prosperity, peace, liberty, justice, authority, and wisdom. 4 of them are women. There are 6 women on the north side of the building, Washington Avenue side. Integrity, courage, mercy, prudence, temperance, and learning. Here's integrity. Here's what's wrong with our community, our government right now. You probably heard this last week, but a lightning bolt knocked off Integrity's head in 1947, and they glued it back on. And then twice when they're putting air conditioning units up here, they knocked off Learning's head over here. And part of her lobe is missing. So we lost our integrity and our learning, and that's what's our number one issue in government right now. Ours education. And this is Minerva, the Roman goddess of wisdom, at the top, at the pediments of each of the pediments around. Spring, summer, and fall at the Brooks, no winter. Don't know why. Peabody Fountain, I was doing a tour there a couple years ago. Tom Verdeja came on the tour saying, Jimmy, you remember Buddy Best's mother said she was 1 year old and she posed to be the cherub for that fountain. I said, and Buddy Best's mother drove our carpool. I said, Tom, I was thinking about basketball in junior high, not about the fountain at the Peabody Hotel. So we emailed Buddy Best in Virginia, and he sent us a 1963 Memphis Press Cemetery story about Mary Cullen, was 1 year old in 1924, the daughter of the man running the Orpheum Theater, and she posed to be the cherub right there for the Austrian sculptor Lyngel, L-Y-N-G-E-L, who also sculpted the frescoes in the Queen Mary's bedroom in Buckingham Palace. So there you go. So I walked those ducks out last Saturday looking at Miss Best right there when she was 1 year old, 80 years ago, and there I'm walking the ducks out there. That's how small my world is here in Memphis, Tennessee, you know. The Muted Bells, B-E-L-L-E-S, there at the Art Museum in Memphis. This was taken last winter, obviously. And you see the 8 names that are on there. Women, Judith, you can tell us better about this. Didn't you write part of that or something? Or?
I kind of stole it from something other people had written.
Pure honesty right there. But anyway, but just people who want their voices to be heard, and that's the bells right there. The statues, the Legacy statue down at Chickasaw Heritage Park, formerly DeSoto Park. This was done in 2013 by the Urban Art Commission and Riverfront Development Corporation. Vinnie Bagwell was a sculptor. A Native American female here. Okay, it's about life size. Right when you're going from the interstate to take the right to go to the Metal Museum, it's right there in the park. You'll see it. And here are the representations on there, up close. This is for African American, Spanish American, and Native American heritage in our community over the last 500 years. Here are like 19 different names of villages, of Native American villages in the area. A female here, here's a blues musician, a U.S. colored troops, a conquistador in here. Just various representations within this whole statue once you get around and get real up close to it. It's really nice. Margaret Polk over at the Memphis Belle, just north of the Doughboy. Minders Hall, I like this one because Elizabeth Minders was the daughter of Seymour Minders, the first president of the University of Memphis, or West Tennessee Normal School. Brister was the second president. The Brister Street and the Minder Street are named for the presidents, but the 2 buildings on campus are named for children who died in their 20s. So Elizabeth Minders died in her 20s, and the building is in the shape of her initials. See, E-M. There's the administration. See, you take these aerial views with me. You can tell I took that picture, can't you? I had a drone up there. No, this is an old picture, but from Beverly Bond's book. Of course, here's the upstanders mill. There's Nina Katz right there, folks. But the names Maxine, Lucy Tibbs, who testified in after the 1866 massacre in Memphis. Her testimony helped lead to the 14th and 15th Amendment. You know, black men got the right to vote in 1870, folks. 50 years before any women got the right to vote. Think about that. And the Native Americans in 1924. And here's some of the women. This is right on Mulberry Street, right across from the entry, a little bit down where the Facing History and Ourselves offices building is right there at Hewling. And then one female served in EMT or police or fire, has died in service on duty. You might remember not too long ago, Metoya Lange is in 2012 when she was killed serving a warrant, as I understand it. But I want to just mention her here. And all our police and fire and EMTs that serve, men and women, what they have to face every day is amazing. Only woman from Memphis ever on the cover of Time magazine. There's your edition, folks. June 18th, 1968, volume 91, number 28. That's going to be on the quiz later on. Aretha Franklin lived here 2 years. Then her daddy moved to Detroit, and she's recorded at Motown. The other 2 Memphians, She's the only Memphis-born person. The other two were Memphians who made their name here, born elsewhere, were Kimmons Wilson and Mr. Crump. Here's the Wells Fargo. Everybody knows where the Tops is on Union Avenue, right? That's a great landmark. Well, right across the street on Claybrook there, you got a Wells Fargo bank behind the Iberia Bank, and a nice mural on the wall there, civil rights mural of all these folks here. Historical markers all around, whether it's Lucy Campbell or Ida B. Wells. Lucy Campbell has a school in Fraser named for her, the great songwriter from BTW. The 19th Amendment, real quick. 1848, some women up there in New York thought they ought to have a right to vote. And they fought. Here's some of the pinnacle years here, through the Civil War, through Yellow Fever, through World War I. The efforts in Memphis during World War I to set aside the 60 or 70-year struggle to get the right to vote, what the women did to help in the World War I effort is very impressive here. Senate passes it, and then the ratification is complete. Here's the book here, but the Suffrage Memorial in Centennial Park in 2016 by Alan LaQuire, who's our sculptor for this one in Memphis. It's a temporary site, you say, right? But it's a beautiful setting up there in Centennial Park. Here's the memorial there. Jane Eskin, Lois D. Berry, and Beth Harwell, some of the first women elected to statewide positions there. Then Knoxville in 2006, they dedicated theirs. Here's Elizabeth Merriweather. I guess they represent all three sections of the state here. Here's a great quote, I want to say, all honor to women, the first disenfranchised class in history who, unaided by any political party, won enfranchisement by its own effort alone and achieved the victory without the shedding of a drop of human blood. How about that for a statement, folks? And let's get right on, we run out of time. Sue in Jackson, Sue Shelton White, who, she burned an image of President Woodrow Wilson in front of the White House because he reneged on his pledge to award women the right to vote. Got arrested for that. She campaigned relentlessly in the state for the 19th Amendment, and which we passed, and then became an attorney and became friends with Eleanor Roosevelt, going to Washington, D.C. to help write and implement the Social Security Act. And then the Burton Memorial up there in Knoxville recently got installed. Harry Burton was the one who cast that one vote, right? His mom kind of said, you better do right tomorrow. And you think about this, it takes 3/4 majority, 36 of 48 states. 3 states didn't even consider the vote. 9 had voted no. 35 had voted yes. It came down to Tennessee. And 1 vote 100 years ago this year. And it happened. The perfect 36. This one's there at the down in downtown Knoxville, the East Tennessee Historical Center there. And here's an old rendering. I'm not going to put up any new renderings. This is an old rendering with a light show on a former site. This is the site that's been picked, right, Paula? Right on the river side of the University of Memphis Law School. This bridge brings you right from the 4th Bluff. And the other side over here is the library. So it's a nice, big, open space, beautiful to both bridges and the delta and the river. It's a great setting, looking everywhere over Memphis. And here's the longest title for a suffrage trail. Tennessee TN Women's Suffrage Heritage Trail.com. So long it has to run off the page, Willie. But this is all the sites around the state of Tennessee. You can find anything related, whether it's a historical marker, a home, a church, a civic building, a courthouse, a continuing story, I'm sure, as more monuments get built. 2 other things for women, the Memphis Queen too, she's a she, right? Okay. Lisa Marie Airplane, she's a she, right? And nothing against my mules here, but when I loved my mules in my story, you see the Union soldiers, how they lined up. So I took that picture out. But look at the 1927 class of Methodist Hospital School of Nursing. Apparently these girls didn't make the cut right here, right? But look at that's not Photoshop. Isn't that amazing right there? And there I am. Thank you for coming today. Now,